Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Thursday, the 27th of February. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Jonny McFarlane for the first time this week. How's it going, Jonny?
Not bad, Derek. Watched the game last night. Very exciting game, to be honest. Interesting and plenty to discuss.
It was very exciting. I enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Didn't enjoy the first half an hour, I've got to say. It was a bit of a bin fire as far as Rangers are concerned. But Barry Ferguson made a big call, and he could have, he said it himself in his press conference afterwards, he could have subbed any of the players out there. He took off Clinton Enciala, brought on Ridvan Yilmaz, moved him out to right back and moved Tav in centrally alongside Robin Proper. And Rangers looked much more stable and went on and put in a real resounding performance, winning by 4-2 after falling 2-0 behind. And I was on with Chris last night for the post-match reaction show. And it's very upbeat. Great scenes at the end with Barry heading over to the away support, who were magnificent last night. And the old Barry tune was getting belted out. I can't remember the last time we heard that. But good start for him as Rangers interim boss. Jonny, what did you make of it all? It was going to say it was a game of two halves, but I think pretty much after half an hour, Rangers were by far the better team, you could say. And it was that sort of gritty doggedness character that's been missing of late that certainly was evident last night.
I thought the game turned on the substitution of Clinton Enciala, who was having a dreadful game, Derek. For the second time in a row, he'd been bullied by a Premiership side, and that's just unacceptable for a Rangers centre-half. You need to have someone in there who can cope with the physicality, and that's twice in a row that he struggled. You've got to give Barry Ferguson credit for that decision, because it was ruthless, Derek. That's what you need as a Rangers manager, a ruthless streak. It wasn't good enough, and I think part of it was taking the young lad out because he wasn't performing, and part of it was to send a message. And I thought from that moment forwards, the entire mindset of the team changed, and they started to play with a freedom and with almost like they'd had a boot up the backside, and then it was very good after that. You know, they got slowly better in that first half, and by the end, I thought they were on top. They had the momentum, scored a great goal, really wonderful goal if you think about the play involved, the touch by young Igaman, and then the through ball by Diamandi was terrific, and a great finish as you would expect from Czerny. And then in that second half, I just thought Rangers totally bossed it, totally controlled it. There was a couple of breaks from Kelly, but other than that, you know, really good stuff, and it's a difficult place to play your football. So overall, I mean, Barry Ferguson will have to go away really happy. And I know you said correctly that first 30 minutes wasn't good viewing, but at the same time, I think Barry will be happier for having seen that his team rebounded and changed it and turned it round, because I don't think that would have happened under Philippe Clement the way it was going towards the end of his tenure.
No. I like this from Stephen. He says, on behalf of all Rangers dads, bit of guts and determination trumps your XG any day of the week. So
you can have both. You can have both, Stephen. But
you can have both.
You can't have the XG if you don't have the basics. And that's been a Rangers problem for so long. You need the basics as the foundation stone for the house that you're trying to build.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan says, lucky to survive that first half hour. Yeah, it was 2-0 going on about 4 or 5. Let's be honest. Kilmarnock were coming at Rangers relentlessly, and it really was a bit of a storm. But like you said, Jonny, that call was made, and Barry did touch on it afterwards. He spoke to Clinton. He is a young lad. I know that we've got a Cyril Desser's interview coming out at noon as well. He speaks about it. I don't think he's even played 10 professional games yet, Clinton Enciala. He's a baby in footballers' terms. He'll learn from this. It's a thing that you'd imagine that he will take from and try and get better. I mean, it's that pitch in itself is difficult. And as you touched on there, the last 2 games, he's been a bit suspect, but we were told about this. We should be expecting this from him. Philippe Clement did say that he will make mistakes, and we just have to be patient with him. I've seen some say he's never a Rangers centre-half and all this sort of stuff. I don't want to go overboard on the young lad, Jonny. It's one of those ones where it's just a case it might be the best thing, taking him out the firing line for a few games because he is very much in the developmental stage.
Absolutely. He's 21. He's come from Italy and he's played under 10 games. You know, he's got to get used to the physicality of Scottish football. It's not just that the players are burly and they bash you about a bit, Derek. It's the referees are more lenient than they are on the continent. So there's two elements to it. And then you add the third element, which is the weather. It's less of an important element. But, you know, a guy who's been used to playing in Northern Italy at this time of year, let me tell you, Lake Como and the surrounds in February are not like Glasgow. You know, so you've got to understand that these three things make it tough. And listen, he's really good on the ball, and we've seen flashes of what he can do building out from the back. I think it's exciting, but he needs to toughen up. And who better to facilitate that than this management team, because they know how tough you need to be to perform for Rangers week in, week out. Yeah. Will he adjust to that? Well, that's the $1 million question. And he will have to improve on that aspect of the game. We know that next to him is an experienced centre-half in Robin Proper who's struggling with it. So it's not always just his age. Some players just don't like the rough and tumble, especially continental, cultured centre-backs.
Yeah.
So it needs to be something that they both improve. But Nsiala in particular, I would say at 21, has the opportunity over the next few years to develop and bring his physicality up to a level where he can start to boss these games in Scotland.
Yeah, David Proven gets in touch. He says, get Richard Goff in to teach Nsiala the dark arts. Get him on the blower, Patrick Stewart, if you're watching. I know you're a big fan of the show in the morning. Get Goffy on the phone. I'm sure he can teach him a thing or two. You mentioned Proper there. He's... As again, he looked very uncomfortable last night. We know he's not used to this sort of up and atom teams when they come up against the opposition forward lines in Scotland. And again, he looked a tad shaky, it's fair to say. But the goals that Rangers conceded, I mean, the second goal, we know I think Raskin never covered himself in glory either. The first goal, Jonny, we've talked about it at great length. Another set-piece goal that Rangers have conceded. Bob says, I need to get our set-pieces sorted out pronto. They just don't have an aerially dominant centre-half. I thought they might have looked to bring someone of that ilk in January. I mean, they brought in this lad, Rafa Fernandez, who never even got on the pitch last night. Jury very much out on him, it's fair to say, and what we can expect from him. But it's just one of those ones. Rangers are going to have to sort that out in the summertime because this cannot continue.
Yeah. It's the eternal discussion, isn't it? And we've had it with Joshua so many times. You know, you need somebody who can play the ball quickly out from the back because the vast majority of games Rangers face, that's what's needed to break down the low block. But at the same time, for these away games, when you're going to be under a bit more pressure, you need someone who can come in and head the ball away. And that's why, and we've discussed it before, and I know it makes us sound like Rangers does. We said, bring in Nika Katic. It's affordable. He's there. He wants to come. He loves the club. He understands the club. It's a no-brainer. And I still think that's a no-brainer because if Rangers can't afford to bring in a centre-half that can play the ball with his feet and head the ball with his head, then you need to find one for one game and one for another. And to me, that's just common sense. Now, Philip Clement didn't agree. We'll see what the situation is going forward. But one of the big things that Rangers need to make sure they have in this new management team once Barry Ferguson shuffles off at the end of the season is they need to make sure that they have a real rich understanding of what the Scottish game is, not what they want it to be. And far too many managers that have come from abroad, especially, have come into Rangers over the last however many years and tried to impose their game on Scotland. And unless you've got a real high-quality player like Dick Advocat did, for example, it's tough. It's tough doing it that way because the gap isn't so big. I don't think that it can't be overcome with a level of physicality. And that's something Rangers need to look at for the future. They need to bring back, I think, the power and the pace that has been associated with all the great Rangers teams of the past.
I agree. A dominant centre-half, please, in the summertime, or even two, perhaps. Just a reminder, folks, if you want to get your comments into the show today, you have to be a subscriber to the channel. It's totally free, but make sure you have subscribed to get your comments in. I know that many of you watch us in the morning, and the data, as Jonny told me, half of you aren't subscribers. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to get your comment into the show. As I touched on, Jonny, Tav moved centrally. another assured performance from James Tavernier as a centre-half. I liked it when he moved to centre-half at Old Trafford. And then again last night, a walk on the Fife side. Brilliant username, says, I wonder if Tav will start centre-back with Proper on Saturday. He's come in for a lot of credit. Some saying he was perhaps even a contender for man of the match last night. Is that a possibility going forward, Tav at centre-back?
Well, this is one of my little pet projects that I've been talking about for a number of years, Derek. I've always liked the idea of Tav becoming a Kyle Walker-style right centre-back in a 3, because he's not as quick as he once was, but for a centre-back, he still shifts. I mean, right-back is one thing, but centre-half is another, and I think in terms of that, he's pacey enough, and he's a leader. I know people sometimes have a pop at that part of him, but you saw that right at the final whistle, he was straight over into Nsiala to put his arm around him, to have a word with him. When you speak to people that have been at Rangers over the last 10 years, they always say Tavernier behind the scenes is a brilliant guy and a good leader and a strong force in the dressing room. I think he's been let down by the people around him. I think that'll be the legacy of Tav when people look back, when they're away from the emotions of what he's been through and the lack of trophies that he's won, which you can't argue with. But I wouldn't put that down to him. I'd put that down to the quality around him. But as a right centre-back in a 3, I think he would be reinvigorated. And I'd love to see Rangers move to that. Now, I was talking to our friend Adam Thornton on the phone the other day. I think I'm one of the last people that like to gas on the phone, Derek. The younger generation, they don't like it. And sort of halfway through the call, I realised Adam was itching to start the messaging. But I always find that's it takes longer than it should. And I'd rather just have a conversation.
Bring back phoning people. That's what that's
exactly. Let's make phone calls great again, Derek. Let's do it. So I'm on the phone to Adam, and we were talking about the Advocat era, and it occurred to me there was a period under Advocat when he went 3-5-2 with 2 wingers. It wasn't wing backs, it was 2 wingers, McCann on one side and Kacelskis on the other. And it was incredibly forward thinking, and for a while Rangers just ripped through the Scottish Premiership. And I'd like to see that again, and I think Tav fits into that, and it gives you more cover at centre back. Now, who plays less centre back in that? Do you play Proper? Do you play Nsiala? It would need work, but I like the idea of going to a back 3, to be honest, with Tav in there, and I think he played excellently on the night. He strolled it, didn't he? And it's not an easy place to stroll it. So well done to him, and a good performance. And maybe that's a bit of food for thought for Barry. Maybe I'm throwing out a wee idea there for.
I like the idea of it. Red fan at right back, it worked last night. I don't think the long term that's the route Rangers should be going down. Of course, it leaves them light. A lot of folks saying, what's happened to Dujon Sterling? Here, where on earth is Sterling? Your guess is as good as mine. We're told he was back training, but not ready to feature in the first team yet. He's just been someone that's just been injury prone. Unfortunately, you can't rely on him, Johnny. That's the thing. Good player when he's fit.
So many players, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's nothing else to say around him. He's a right good player as Dujon Sterling, but until you can get a sustained season on the pitch, then he just becomes a frustration and someone that you can't rely on. Now, if you're talking about Tav at right centre back, I think Dujon Sterling could do that role as well. I think Dujon Sterling could also play wing back and be very good. So, if only he was fit.
Yeah, I know that's a $1 million problem at this moment in time. Kev, just on the issues about your phone, says Johnny to start in the next BT ad.
It's good to talk.
Yeah. That's one for a certain generation, but absolutely superb stuff. The goals, I wanted to, well, first of all, a big thank you to Andrew, who's kindly donated £10 to the channel. Thank you very much, Andrew. That is very kind of you, sir. The goals, and you mentioned that the Cherny goal was superb, got Rangers back into it. A goal from a corner, Cyril Dessers equalising. Johnny, couldn't believe my eyes when I seen that go in. And then he took his Rangers' third goal, his second of the night, extremely well. Wonderful ball through from Yilmaz. Yeah, I liked his interview with Rangers TV after the game, Dessers. He says that Red Fan just knows his runs and he knows where he's going to run and where to put the ball. So, took his goal really well. Missed 2 gilt-edged opportunities in the first half, but that's what I like about Cyril Dessers. It doesn't let it affect him. That's now 20 goals for the season for him. Iron Blue says, what man Dessers is. 1 week I hate him, the next I love him like a son. And there's an interesting...
That sums it up. No more needs to be said. The guy's a mercurial presence, isn't he? He's completely infuriating, but at the same time, he's got an iron will and an iron mentality, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And do you know what? See, when he does leave, Derek, I think he'll be looked upon very fondly. People will look back on his time and say, you know what, there was times when people were a bit tough on him, and maybe myself included. I still don't think he's the answer long term. But there's no doubt that he rolls with a punch. He absolutely does. And he comes back, and you're never really looking at him and thinking there's not enough effort going in. The guy works hard.
Yeah.
When he's on it, he's on it. He's a player. But unfortunately, when he's not on it, he's not. And I go back to that excellent interview with Ronald de Boer that was done, I think it was by Andy Newport, right at the start of Desser's arrival at the club. And Ronald de Boer said, this is a guy who can play 10 out of 10, but he can also give you 2 out of 10. Yeah. And you've just got to be able to accept the fluctuations. And I think that was spot on. Absolutely spot on.
Yep, fantastic. There's a comment here that pulling you up, Jonny, from the Pigeon Strangler.
Okay, here we go.
Jonny criticised Dessers for not scoring enough first goals. According to Jonny, scoring 2 in a match means less because he didn't score first. Can he elaborate on that today?
Yes, I can, Pigeon Strangler. My position on Dessers has always been that too often his goals come in games when things don't matter or later in games. So if you're 2-0 up, Dessers will come on and score a double and look fantastic. And I think in the key moments, when you look back at his Rangers career, there's no doubt that they've been marked by big misses in important games. I would discount his European form. I think his European form's been good overall. But you think back to that game at Parkhead, he does so well. He manages to, I think it was Lager Bielka, he wrestles and outfights for the ball. He runs through one-on-one with Joe Hart. He's yards from goal. It would be a defining moment, and he squaffs it, you know. And there's been other moments like that in big domestic games. I think you think back to Queen's Park, he's put through one-on-one with a goalie. You're 1-0 down to Queen's Park, staring down the barrel of the worst defeat in the club's history in the Scottish Cup. 2 minutes to go, and the effort's tame. I think he's one of those players, a bit like Kenny Miller, that if he's got time to think about it, you don't back him. But if it's just in the moment, hit and hope, he's actually very good. You saw last night, the ball bounces over his shoulder. He just has to turn and hit it. Great. Phenomenal. Great finish. Yeah. But when he's kind of through one-on-one, I would never back him, Derek. No. But look, it also feels a bit churlish to be criticising him on the back of a double and the back of a performance where he worked his tail off for the team. Yeah. It's important to recognise the balance with Dessers. There's 2 sides to Cyril Dessers. And to focus on one side and not the other is unfair, and vice versa. Overall, you can make a judgment like I have that he's not quite there, given his wages, given his age. You know, I would look to move him on if you could get money in for him. That said, if you can't move him on, if you can't get money in for him, I don't think he's going to let anyone down too often over the course of a season. You know, if he's a squad player, he shouldn't be the number 1, number 9. But as a squad player, I'm not upset that he's a member of Rangers squad, I think.
Yeah, now, there's a comment came in moments ago saying 42 goals in 18 months. That's a good goal return. That's what you're wanting from a Rangers striker. He could have had, let's be honest, about 60 plus goals with the chances that he has missed. That is the enigma that is Cyril Dessers. But listen, I'm not too sure. If an offer comes in the summertime, a big offer, then of course it may be something that Rangers will look at. But I have no qualms about him staying on if he wants to stay on. I think he's a good presence to have in and around the place. You mentioned there, you probably miss him if he does depart. He is well liked at, I think, pretty much every club he's been at. I know Feyenoord, when we had Rangers initially signed him, had Johan, who was at the Feyenoord podcast. We've had him on a few times. He said he wasn't quite sure about Feyenoord signing this guy at the time, but when he left, everyone was loving him. Of course, he fired him to the Conference League final as well. So he's a very well-liked individual, but he has you tearing your hair out if you have hair, that's for sure. But that is just Serial Dessers in a nutshell. Interesting scenes on the touchline as well, Jonny, last night. I did enjoy the passion and Barry Ferguson on there with the likes of Neil McCann, Billy Dodds and Alan McGregor as well. John with the point here says, great to see 4 minds on the touchline instead of 1 and with passion. Very much enjoyed Neil McCann jumping on the shoulders of Barry when Dessers scored his second goal of the night. And that's what the fans want to see. We've seen it, the sort of the chanting at the end as well, Jonny. This is an appointment that has been made, I think, in a large part to bridge that gap of disconnect between the fans and the players. We know it's a short-term fix at this moment in time, but what did you make of the antics on the touchline, shall we say? And do you think you can understand why the Rangers hierarchy made this decision, getting these guys in? Because it's one of those ones. I mean, I've seen it. You all know I covered Bolton as well, and when Bolton dismissed Ian Evatt about 6 weeks ago, they got a Boltonian legend, Julian Darby, in to steady the ship, and he sort of got the fans back on board. He won 2 matches, and yes, the feel-good factor has been brought back to the club. You can understand why clubs do it. You can understand why Rangers have done it, Jonny.
Well, I am not a big fan of this appointment, I have to be honest, and I don't think it'll. I don't think it'll work, and I think I have concerns about if Barry gets a managerial bounce, that there'll become a clamour for him to get the job full time because he's done it so well. We've seen it happen time and time again across European football on a macro level.
Well, it happened across the city, Jonny. Remember when Neil Lennon took charge and he got the job?
Exactly. It happened across the city, happened in Aberdeen with Barry Robson, happened with Manchester United, so it can happen at the biggest clubs with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. We've seen it so many times. Tim Sherwood at Spurs is another one that jumps out at me.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned that will lead to pressure from both the media and the fans down the line. But I'll say this. When I heard the news, I thought it was ludicrous, I have to be honest. But I think I can now look at it and say there's a reconnection there that you saw last night with the fans, and a reconnection on social media and people getting excited again. And that's, I think, an example where the club can look at that and point to that and say, well, this is what we wanted to do. And it's up to Barry. You know, Barry doesn't have to prove me wrong or anyone else, but he can go out there and get the wins that are required. I've nothing against Barry personally, by the way. When I was a kid growing up, Barry Ferguson was a huge player for the team and someone I admired massively. So it's not against Barry. It's more just you look at the CV that Barry's got. Having managed Alloa really, really spectacularly badly. Kelty Hearts was Lowland League. He did well there, but it's a Lowland League. And then Clyde was pretty average. And by his own admission, didn't want to get back involved in football coaching and hadn't thought about it for 3 years. But, you know, sometimes in football, there's just a magic that you can't describe in words, or that you would never expect to come along, and it does. And one thing I'd say about Barry, I think he's been quite smart in the way he's put together that management team. You look at Billy Dodds and Neil McCann and Alan McGregor, all bubbly, upbeat characters. I know some of the support have issues with Dodds. Some even have an issue with Neil McCann, you know, about comments made by Alfredo Morelos and things like that. But these guys are Rangers men. They understand the club. They understand what it means to perform at a high level in a basic way, and I think in a more intrinsic way than someone who's an outsider coming in. And they'll make that very clear and simple for the players. And I think that the backroom team has enough quality through it. Neil McCann, obviously, by all accounts, is a really good coach. And when you see him talking on the TV, he's very, very insightful about the game. He makes complex points in a clear way, which is one of the most important things in modern football. So I like the fact that, kind of similar to Steven Gerrard, Barry's almost rounded himself out with the backroom team, and that's huge, and that can be the difference between now and the end of the season. But with Rangers, it's always the next game, and now the pressure goes on to Ibrox at the weekend, and we'll make our further judgments based on what we see there. I thought it was really, really, really positive to see a ruthless decision being made after 30 minutes, which changed the game. When was the last time we saw substitution change a game at Rangers? It's been a while.
I know.
That's number one. And number two, to see the kinship between the fans and the management team at the end of the game. And by the way, Barry didn't let that. He went with the players, took the applause, but he wasn't milking it. It was acknowledgement and then away, which I think was another thing that was kind of a guy who understands the club intrinsically would do. So I think it was an impressive first game, but it's a first game. And where will we be come May? There's almost always a new manager bounce. Well, we'll find out. But it's been an excellent start. There's no doubt about that. From the way that Barry's handled himself in terms of the media, in front of the cameras, to last night, I think it's been impressive.
Yeah, Burrows Grace DJ says, getting a sore neck, nodding in agreement with Jonny. Dearie me.
I can't have that. Can't have that.
That's a first, that's for sure.
Very unusual to hear. Yeah, very unusual to hear.
Very much so. Some comments coming in. Sylvester and says, I loved the "That's my boy" moment. That's when Diamandi was running past him. I think the goal for was by Rami at the end there. And Matthew says, if I got a "That's my boy" from Barry Ferguson, I'd have a heart attack. But no better person, I guess, to learn from. Nico Raskin, another one. I think it'll do well under the guidance of Barry Ferguson as well. Just on the point about the job, it's a short-term issue, Jonny. I know what you say. If he does well, there will be a bit of a clamour to give him the job on a permanent basis. I think that the new guys coming in, and we'll touch on that shortly, will have their own man in mind, you'd imagine. Ross, by the point note, says, what if he leads us to Bilbao, Jonny? If he leads the Rangers to Bilbao, then he's in the conversation, surely.
Listen, I'm going to be the one that's going to upset everyone because I don't care if he wins the Europa League.
Roberto Di Matteo style. That's another one. Mind he led Chelsea to the...
I mean, listen, I'm being facetious. If he wins the Europa League, then maybe I'll consider it. But yeah, Roberto Di Matteo is a brilliant example, Derek, because he won the FA Cup and the Champions League, didn't he? And started the next season. The Chelsea hierarchy felt like they had to give him it. And it all fell apart the next season. That's a consistent mistake clubs make, isn't it? They see a new manager bounce, and especially if it's a legend, they get carried away with the feel-good factor, and then they make a decision that they would never have made 4 months before. And when you appoint a legend for a period, you put yourself in a position where that could happen. So let's see how it pans out. I think Mr. Mourinho will have something to say about that. If Mr. Ferguson can get past Mr. Mourinho in the Europa League, I think that'll be an absolutely outstanding achievement. This is a guy who is a master of these two-legged affairs. Yeah. And I think we need to look at that before we're talking about winning Europa Leagues and getting to Bilbao and all the rest of it. Because Fenerbahce will be a really, really, really tough one. It's not even just Mourinho. Their team is full of wily old foxes who have been there, done it at the very, very top level. So I think that's a very, very tough match to get through.
Yes. And listen, if Rangers do manage to get the better of Fenerbahce, they could play Bilbao in the next round. They're taking on Roma, I think, in their match, and Rangers will play the winners of that if they can get past the Turks. So, they're going to have to beat the best in Europe in this competition if they're going to make it.
It's not going to be an easy run. The final, that's for sure, looking at some of the teams that are in the kind of pathway.
Yeah, it absolutely will not.
Bilbao are fourth in the Spanish league.
Yeah, they're doing well. Yeah, they've got some cracking players. The boy Nico Williams is one that stands out, of course. Downs with the point, and we'll wrap up with this. You may have seen news yesterday. It was sort of swallowed up with what was going on at Rugby Park. But it says opinion on Paraag Marathe's comments about his teams being individual and not being feeder clubs to each other. This is an interview he gave to the Financial Times. Financial Times Business of Football Summit. He says that Rangers won't become Leeds United's feeder club. He says, we always have our eyes and ears open. We're always looking at other opportunities. Multi-club from the standpoint of hierarchy, that's not really how we're looking at it. We're looking at it as almost standalone. Leeds United stands alone, and if we were to pursue another club, that club would stand alone. Are there benefits to having leadership and ownership of multiple clubs? Absolutely. With that, with what you could share and do on the commercial side, even sometimes on the sporting side, but we don't really look at it, and we haven't contemplated it as one club, as a feeder club to another. Each club deserves all of our attention and effort. What do you make of that, Jonny?
Well, it's just what we've been saying, haven't we? We've been told by sources that that's the case from the get-go. And I think it's about economies of scale, as Marathe said. There's lots of synergies, but I don't think it's going to be, if it goes through, Rangers have the youngster that is going to get transferred to Leeds, and Leeds have the failure that is going to get transferred to Rangers. I don't think that's how it's going to work. So they understand, having been at a club, and listen, Derek, you know this, having been down there and been around Leeds. Leeds are a huge institution. This is not one of these slightly edified English clubs like a Bournemouth or something like that. You know, this is a proper English institution, and they know the passion and the fervour in Leeds as a city. I mean, I've spent a bit of time there. I used to work down there quite a lot, and it is intense. They love their football team. There is a sense of Glasgow and the fervour in Glasgow and Leeds. It's just that it's a one club city. Yes. So it's, you know, they're incredibly passionate, and I think once they get that 53,000 stadium, they'll fill that, no bother, and Leeds will go on to great things. But the point is, there's an intensity and a passion about Leeds that I think when I listen to Paraag Marathe talk about the club and talk about being the custodian of it and managing all that properly, I think it'll help them when they come into Rangers, if they come into Rangers, if it all gets sealed and signed and done. So I think in a lot of ways, I'm just not concerned about that. Me personally, Rangers as a feeder club, that would be something that I would have a major concern with. I think it would be terrible for the brand of Scottish football at large if Rangers were considered a feeder club. And look, you could apply that to Celtic, you could apply that to Aberdeen, Hearts and Hibs, to be honest, as well. And maybe there's a little bit of a parallel in how Hibs have been managed with the Black Knights in mind and the Bournemouth setup that they have. You know, they've not been a feeder club for Bournemouth or vice versa. You know, there's been synergies. Bournemouth have loaned a couple of players, but there's not been that feeling, I don't think, amongst the Hibs fans that they're now just some wee team operating under Bournemouth. No. And I think that'll be even more pronounced in terms of this 49ers deal. I don't think that'll be the case at all. That's murmuring away in the background, but exciting times, I think, on the horizon for Rangers. Plenty going on, both on and off the pitch, but keep your eyes peeled on the website, folks, on the YouTube channel and on the social media channels as well. Just a reminder, if you aren't subscribed to the website, we still have that brilliant offer on at the moment, a quid for 6 months. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe to sign up. Jonny, have you noticed a comment there that caught your eye, or do you want to? Yeah, I'm just laughing at Null FNC saying Jonny Lovin talking about his own club for once. The infamous McFarlane is a Hibs fan stuff once again, rearing its ugly head. Glory to the high bees and all that. People will clip that up, by the way. I know that's big. Anyway, we'll wrap up there. Big thanks to Jonny for joining us as ever, and thank you to you all for tuning into the show. It's very much appreciated. And I don't think we'll speak to you later on this afternoon unless something mental happens, Ibrox way. But we will be back on tomorrow morning. I'll be on with Joshua at 9:30. Press conference day again tomorrow, so plenty will be going on at the Rangers Trading Centre. So enjoy your Thursday train spotting, John. I'm off on a pint with Begbie.
I would love that. That would be absolutely sensational stuff. But yeah, we'll
survive that, Derek. I wouldn't survive that. I'm not hard enough for that. Begbie would have my guts for garters.
yeah.
You and him would be up at 6 a.m. in some leaf bolt hole, partying the night away.
What a film that is, by the way. Absolutely sensational. Right, enjoy your Thursday, folks, and we'll speak to you later. Bye for now.